Hello everyone and welcome to the latest Handyman in the field. Today we have a new topic and we're going to be focusing on a slightly different audience. So a lot of the content that I've put out up to this point has been specifically for the handyman and who's looking to start a business, or the person who's looking at having tools in their truck, or kind of just the person who's interested in what we do week to week with the This Week in the Fields that we release on Mondays. Going forward, we're going to have a couple of additional things that we're going to be talking about. But some of the videos we're going to be talking about is they're going to be homeowner focused. If you're a homeowner, what should you know based off of what I've seen, what my business has done, what helps you as the homeowner reduce costs, get things done more efficiently, and maintain things. So to start the series off, we're going to be talking about a subject that it still correlates into the core of what we talk about here, which is running a handyman business. But basically, it's about what things I wish a customer knew before they call me. So specifically, after years of doing this, there are a few things that make every service call go smoother, and none of them are very difficult, and they simply just help me show up better prepared. I've had situations where a customer, recently, this is actually a very recent situation, a customer calls me, says, "Hey, I've got a rental property. It's X amount of minutes away from you. Can you go out there and take a look at it?" So I specifically say, well, what's the issue? It's an electrical issue. They don't give me any details besides that. It's an electrical issue. Now, I can tell you from my point of view, that's probably the most generic information that I can get. So just to put in perspective, you get there and you find out that the electrical issue is a light fixture. Okay, so did you bring bulbs with to swap out the bulbs to make sure it's not an issue with the bulbs? Sometimes while the bulb might not be bad, the LED, if it's an LED bulb, everyone assumes they last forever. They don't. They last a very long time, but if they get regular use, they can go bad. So you might have brought bulbs, sure. Is it the light fixture? Well, you probably didn't bring an entire light fixture, especially if you didn't have any knowledge ahead of time about what it was. Is it an issue with the switch? The switch could go bad. Is it a dimmer switch? These are things that help you come up with the not only ways of troubleshooting, but also ways of being able to figure out what exactly you need to have. Now, if you've got a fully stocked van, that's not me, but if you've got a fully stocked van of a bunch of different materials, and you have stuff for all these different scenarios, that's great on you. I don't have that at this moment. In the future, there's a certain level of supplies that I keep here in my shop. The supplies that I have here in my shop, 100% would be the same stuff that I would keep in a truck if I had the truck, or if I had a van fully decked out. I have switches, I have light bulbs, I do have some light fixtures, but it's mostly for recessed lights. And I have a variety of other things. I just can't always have all of that stuff with me at every time. So if you're a homeowner or you're a future customer for any handyman business, this isn't going to just apply to me, but these are things that you can do to make sure that things just go smoothly for you, but ultimately it's going to help out the person that you're calling for the work itself. So first thing I always tell everybody is pictures tell a story. Send me as many pictures as you can. There's no pictures that you're going to send to me that I'm not going to be able to see something from it. Now, if you are unable to send pictures because you're not as familiar with taking photos and sending them via text message, that's understandable. I've had customers that are like that, and obviously then you can't use that. But if you have the ability, take several pictures, zoom in, take wider shots to get more of the full picture. Take a picture of the surrounding area. Sometimes the best thing to do is to film a video and then narrate what the problem is as you're actually talking about it, because those types of things can be very helpful. I had a customer recently where I said, can you send me a couple of pictures of what you're describing? She was describing that she had some issues with some weather stripping and her door was not lining up properly and she was concerned. She took a perfect video, showed exactly what I was looking for. I had a great idea of the color of the weather stripping from the video, where her concerns were, realized that I needed to make a hinge adjustment. There was a latch adjustment because the door wasn't latching properly. I found all of that out from like a 15-second video. And it saves me from having to come out, which if I don't have to come out, it ultimately is less expense that's spread out over the course of my entire business. I don't charge for estimates when someone contacts me. If someone contacts me and says, I have a door issue, I try to get all of this information as much as I possibly can, because the more information I have, the better preparation I have to show up and be prepared. And I think that is an understated thing. I think that sometimes people assume that you're going to show up and you can just solve every problem. And while you can certainly solve a lot of problems with with 90% of what you typically have, it's that other 10% that you might not be able to solve a problem for. Door issues, I'm looking back here because it's in this cabinet, a planer. I have multiple planers that can solve an issue. I do not drive around with a planer all the time. If it's an interior door and it can be planed, that's something that can solve that problem very easily. But I don't drive around with that. So if I don't know that the door is sticking, or you're just saying the door is not closing, there's a variety of different things that could be. Another one that comes up a lot is, someone says, I think I have a leak. Okay, well, what did you do in order to figure out what exactly you've come to this conclusion for? So for example, did you stick so what I typically tell people is you stick a tray underneath the leak where you think the leak is, water will pool there if you're using it. Now, if you're not using that fixture, you're not going to see a leak. So you have to actually, try to test it, try to diagnose it. And the thing is, like, you're not necessarily solving the problem, but you're just giving more information on what could have happened to it so that we as the handyman can try to solve that problem. So I think that's another important thing. Another big deal when it comes to pictures, but also correlates to other information that it doesn't necessarily have to be a picture, is model numbers. If you have a faucet, toilet, garbage disposal, sump pump, appliance, door closers, if you can find a model number for something, and sometimes this can be identified by the pictures, but it's not always the case. I can take pictures. If you take really detailed pictures from different directions, I can take those pictures and typically use AI to try to identify things. But if you have a model number, it just cuts out a lot of that extra work, which then in turn is going to mean less diagnostic cost for the customer. As a great example, I had a customer recently who had a Anderson storm door with a retracting screen, and the customer said that the screen was ripped in a certain spot, but it had wound up and it was stuck. So I simply asked if she could send me some pictures. She did an amazing job sending me pictures of it, both sides. In addition to that, she also took a picture of the label, which had the exact. Anderson's really good about their model. Will include a certain tag for the color of the door too. So if you have to get some sort of part that's related to a color, it's in that model. Anderson is also very good about, if you search, you can go onto their website and you can find the parts for something if you have that model number. So if you plug in a model number of a door, it will tell you exactly what all the parts are. If you have a problem with something, specifically in this case it was the retracting screen, I can narrow that down to a kit that I can then purchase to then show up and replace. And that scenario was the best case scenario. She gave me exactly what I needed. I knew exactly what the parts were. Once the parts were ordered, it's just a matter of waiting for the parts to come in, but I was able to get out to her place within 2 weeks of her initially contacting me. with the parts in hand, did the repair and got it all taken care of so she could use her door again with the screen. The thing is, if I had to figure out a time to get out there just to be able to find out the model number, in addition to then coming back and ordering the parts, it could extend the process. I might not have a chance to get out there for, at least a couple days, maybe until the following week. The parts are a very interesting thing when it comes to certain things, because you can get some parts super quick and some parts take forever. I've got an order for some shutters from Home Depot. I ordered them almost a month ago. I still don't have them. Still don't have an answer on when they're supposed to arrive, even though they were supposed to arrive, June 19th, which was at this point almost a month ago. So the thing is, if you have the ability to get parts ordered, it just gives you more time. If something arises or a part goes on back order, at least you're in the queue. Back order just means that they're waiting for them to get back in. So if you can get into the queue for the parts, then it just speeds that up. The faster the parts get ordered, the faster the work can get done. The faster the parts get ordered, the faster the parts will arrive, and then you can get the work scheduled. So that's something to keep in mind. I had a customer recently specifically say they needed a sump pump replaced, and they wanted a very specific model, not found in stores, very high quality, sump pump. But the idea was she wanted this one specific sump pump. She was able to give me the exact model number of that sump pump, and I was able to find a replacement specifically for it. So again, that information helps out a lot. I didn't have to go to that house to find out what she wanted, because she knew exactly what it was she needed. So again, model numbers are gold. They really are. Another thing that you can do is tell me what you've already tried. If you call me or if you send me a text message and say, hey, my doors, I need a pocket door fixed. Okay, well, what exactly is needing to still be done? Do you need the door? Is the door stuck? Is it off the track? Is the door, not moving smoothly? Tell me the different things that you've already tried that I can narrow it down. If you tell me the door's stuck, there could be a completely different issue than, the track needs to be replaced. If I don't have pictures, how do I know whether or not the track that is there is even something I can replace, or if it's a completely different thing where I have to have all the new hardware for the track and the connectors? I can see that based off of the age of the doors and things like that. If you had someone else come through, I've had this before with some other situations where someone will come through and say, oh, well, I had someone come out and they took a look at this. They couldn't figure it out. That's why I called you. Okay, but what exactly did they charge you, and what did they say they were charging for? What did they say the issue was? Things like that. Those things make a difference. Did they do a temporary repair? Did you try to do a temporary repair? Because a temporary repair is going to be solving a problem that is current, but I need to know what the original problem was. So those are important things to let me know. As a customer, the biggest thing is don't guess the problem. You don't necessarily know what the problem is. That's why you're calling one of us. If you want to know exactly how to fix it, then you could do the research, you could look on YouTube, and you could make sure that you find the solution, or the solution that you believe it is. But if you're calling us and telling us that you know exactly what the solution is, it doesn't make it seem like you're really interested in what our solution would be. It would just be, you're just looking for someone to perform what you want them to perform. And that's not really diagnostic work. That's more just doing a repair. That's like saying, I have a picture, it needs to be hung. I need you to hang it for me. That's what you're looking for. If you have a leak and you think you know what the problem is with the leak, and we come in and we try to do that thing and it doesn't work, you're already creating a scenario where you're not going to be satisfied with the fact that it wasn't the solution that you thought it was. Plus, we may have priced you based off of your assumption, and while I try not to do that, I try not to price diagnostic type stuff based off of customers' assumptions. You could get in a position where someone gives you a price and goes, yes, to replace this is going to cost this. But then when we show up, we find out, well, it's not that. It's actually worse than that, and it's going to cost this much instead. And we're already on site. And now you're in a scenario where you're going to be upset about the fact that we are trying to upsell you. Well, we're not trying to upsell you. We're just telling you what the problem is, and the problem is not what you thought it was. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. If you've had something repaired multiple times, tell us. Tell us that the item has been repaired. Tell us that, tell us the problems that this specific thing has had multiple times. It helps us narrow things down and eliminate certain repairs, which then reduces the amount of time we're on site, which ultimately for you reduces the amount that we're paying. If we walk into a situation and we find out that you've already done modifications, or you've already attempted to do things yourself, or you have, there's hidden stuff that we can't see, we don't know any of that. If you had a light installed at some point and you did it yourself and it wasn't properly wired and now you're having a problem, we're not necessarily going to be able to find the junction box if you didn't have a junction box. So that's something to keep in mind. Be honest with what is going on in the situation. Sometimes diagnostic work is just the job. That's it. There's not actually a repair. Sometimes we have to come in and just look at the work and figure out what the actual problem is. I will be honest, those are probably the hardest things for customers to accept a cost associated with, because they want to know what the solution is. They want to know what the end result is. I can tell you, you have to find out what the problem is before you can find out what the solution is. And it still takes time to figure out the problem. You having a leak or you having an electrical issue, that is not necessarily the problem. The problem is what's causing those things, what's causing the leak, what's causing, a water spot on your ceiling, what's causing a leak, a puddle of water in your basement. What is causing these things? That's what you're having us come out to do. We're there to figure out what the job is so that we can give you the appropriate solution to do. But diagnostic work is not free. When people tell you that they can come out and take a look for free, it's not that they're coming out to take a look for free. It's that they're coming out with the intention of figuring out what the problem is and then pricing it. In most cases, if they did do that, they're then pricing the repair, the actual work that is going to be completed to solve the ultimate problem and give you a solution. They are pricing that to include the diagnostic work they've already done. They're accepting that they might not get that job approved, and if that happens, they're not getting any money for the diagnostic work. Most of the time, the only companies that can do that are companies that are much larger, or companies that charge a specific service fee, and then within a certain time frame, they're expected to figure out what the problem is so that they can give you a solution. And then that service fee is billed back into the actual job cost. That's the same thing as coming out to do an estimate for a specific price and rolling it back into the cost of the job, or saying you'll get that money back at the end of the job, or if you approve the work. It's all the same thing. It's just different ways of doing it. So just keep that in mind. But just remember, the more information that I have or any other handyman has, the better we can prepare, the more likely I can bring the right materials, the fewer return trips are required, and the faster that everything goes. In an ideal world, I want to try to gain as much information as I can. Sometimes the questions that I ask, or obviously a handyman asks, when we ask these questions, we're trying to figure out as much as we can. We're trying to do a lot of the diagnostic before we even get on site, which for you comes out to be no cost, because there's no one's going to bill you just to talk to you on the phone. If that's happening, you're calling the wrong companies. But if you have the ability to give the information that they're needing, as mundane as some of the information is, those things can really make a huge difference. If we find out what the problem is, we ask you a series of questions to eliminate certain things. You're able to send pictures. You're able to send a video possibly. You're able to, find the model number of whatever it is you've got. Those things help. The one that comes up more than probably anything is shower valves. I've got a leaky faucet in my shower. They'll take a picture of the diverter, which is the pipe that comes out to fill up the bathtub. That doesn't show me anything about what type of valve you had for your shower. What's causing your leak is the valve. The valve has a cartridge in it. The cartridge needs to be replaced. The only way to replace it is by knowing which one it is. Sometimes it's as simple as just taking a picture of that handle and seeing at the bottom what the brand is. That eliminates, or it narrows it down. It doesn't eliminate, but it narrows it down to a very small selection if that brand on there is one of the major brands. In some cases, some brands only have a couple of cartridges that are commonly used. Now, if we get on site and you have got an uncommon one, there's nothing we can do about that. We're just going to have to figure out which one it is and then identify it and then see if we can either get it right away or if it's something we're going to have to order. But the problem is that having that little bit of information could make things go quicker and could make things go more efficiently for you as well as us. So just to wrap it all up, I'm not necessarily looking for a customer to diagnose the problem. I'm not looking for them to give me the solution so that I can fix the problem. I'm looking for enough information to show up prepared and to solve it as efficiently as possible. I've said this multiple times if you've watched a lot of my videos. I like to work efficiently. I will buy a specific tool that will allow me to work more efficiently. I will buy things that are better than, or that cost more money because it helps me be more efficient. I carry certain things to become more efficient. Efficiency is everything. And as a business owner and as a owner of a handyman business, efficiency is everything. The more jobs that I can get to in a day, the more profitable I can be. And the thing is, that might not necessarily mean something to you as the owner, or as a homeowner, someone who's hiring us. But keep this in mind. The more jobs that we can do in a day, the more price gets spread out. So our overhead has to be covered a certain direction. If our overhead is covered by 4 jobs compared to 2 jobs, the 2 jobs are going to not have to, ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, they wouldn't be as expensive as the 2 jobs in one day would be more expensive than the 4 jobs. Because there's a certain level of time associated with that, and time is money. We all know that. So, just keep that in mind. The biggest thing is, the better prepared I am, the better I can serve you. So with all that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or concerns about anything that I talked about here, be sure to leave them in the comment section below. In addition to that, if you're new here, welcome. We've had some new subscribers, but if you're not subscribed, be sure to subscribe, share the video with other people that might find it helpful, like the video. That helps get it out to other people in general so that other people can find this type of content. With all that being said, I appreciate all of the recent growth, the people who've been leaving comments, the new subscribers, appreciate it all. You guys are awesome. That is everything for this episode. Be sure to check out our other episode, or our other video series that comes out on Mondays, which is called This Week in the Field, which recaps my entire week worth of work related to the business. With all that being said, you guys have been watching the Handyman in the Field. We'll see you guys next time.